looks like we might be live. Let's go over to chat. Nick's here.
Yeah.
No, Nick, we're
Nick.
not done yet. We're having some technical difficulties, guys. Bear with us. Still,
Can you guys hear Dan?
that's what we're trying to figure out. Hopefully they can. If not, yeah.
Hopefully we find out in a second here.
Yeah, because there's probably a delay.
Yeah, yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Good. Rap says he can hear you.
Yes. Thank you. All right. I guess we got to take two.
Take two.
Yes. Thank you, Rob, for hanging in there. Yeah. Cool. All right. Let me just get everything kind of situated.
Yep.
All right. I don't know if we should redo the intro or kind of just go straight into the main segment. So I don't know how this is going to show up. We'll just see. All right, guys. Welcome to Take 2 of Trek Live Episode 2. That's kind of funny. Earlier we talked about, the casting news for Discovery. Hey, Ross. Ross is in chat,
Good
too.
seeing you, Ross. And Nick. I don't think I said hi, Nick.
Yeah.
Appreciate you coming back, Nick.
Yeah, this episode we're going to talk about our favorites. Bill and I are super, super excited to get started. I'm sure everyone's going to be civil in the chat, kind of like we talked about last time. Definitely bear with us, though, because we do have technical difficulties from time to time. We are human. No, we're not Borg, so we're definitely going to be make some mistakes.
Is not yet achieved.
Yeah.
We're working on it.
So the main segment is going to consist of Bill and I discussing our favorite characters, favorite ship, favorite captain, favorite movies, favorite episodes, and favorite series. So
and favorite villains. I don't think you named villains.
Yeah, and villains. Sorry. So we've got a lot of stuff to talk about.
We do.
Really excited for. So.
We're definitely counting on you guys to give us not only feedback on our choices, but we want to hear what you think about these categories too. As we're going along, we are hoping that you share your choices, and we'll certainly be watching the comments and responding as we go. And yeah, like Dan said, I'm certainly really excited. We've been working on this one for a little while, and we're looking forward to getting going with it.
Yeah, and just know that I think there's gonna be some definitely bombs dropped on favorites and stuff. So just kind of respect each other and join the conversation, obviously. So I guess without further ado, we should start off with favorite characters.
Yeah, and one thing that I think, for some of these categories, you're going to hear us name like a top choice and then maybe a couple of alternates, a couple of maybe runners-up. So as far as characters go, Dan, do you want me to go first? Do you want me to name my favorite, or would you like me to?
You can go first, but before we start, also, like, this was really tough to do, guys. Like, we went back and forth. I think that it just depending on when you catch me or catch us, we'll have different favorites. But this is favorites from right now where we are at this current time, so it could always change. Definitely gonna reiterate that, especially when we get towards series for sure. But yeah, I guess go ahead and with your favorite character.
Okay, so for me, this one was actually fairly simple. I picked Spock. Um, the one caveat to this is and I think Dan did this too, consciously decided to not include the captains in this part of the discussion because we have captains coming up as its own thing.
Yeah,
So
that's what Ross is asking. So the restrictions for
yeah,
characters is that this excludes the captains.
hmm
So Ross, just know that.
right. Simply because, like I said, we have a separate category for them. But with that in mind, I did choose Spock. I think Spock sort of epitomizes everything Star Trek stands for me. Um, when I think when the masses think of Star Trek, they picture Leonard Nimoy as Spock. He has completely that character has permeated pop culture as much, if not more, than anybody else ever associated with Star Trek. But I really think he stands for what Star Trek stands for. This conflicting nature of emotion and logic, and um, I just have always responded to it. I've always identified with him, um, and he's extremely well developed. He changes over the course of his time in Trek. He's long lasting. He was, in the very first pilot in the cage, and is, while he's not in Star Trek Beyond, in the most recent iteration of Star Trek, he's a part of it. Ross, to answer your question, I mean, Spock as a whole, I think is the best, but Nimoy for sure is what I'm thinking of here. But he's made an impact over a long period of time in the franchise. His character's changed a good deal, great deal, from beginning to end. And I think he's the hook for a lot of people. I think he was when I certainly wasn't around when TOS was on initially, but everything I've ever read, everything I've ever seen, seems to indicate that a lot of people found their way into Star Trek through Spock by identifying with his struggle and his traits. I guess I could say he made it cool to be a nerd. He made it cool to be smart. He made it cool to be a good friend, and I think he's my number one, pretty soundly and easily. But I do have a lot of other choices that I could have gone with, at least as far as like in the conversation, and I'm going to talk about a couple more after Dan talks about his choice.
Yeah, so definitely I recognize that I'm a little bit different than a lot of people, and this might make some waves, but my favorite character is Tom Paris, actually. I
Good choice.
love his, the hotshot pilot. I love him in Voyager. You know, that Voyager in itself is a discussion, and heavy discussion. But I don't know. I really enjoy, and Voyager kind of has a special place in my heart, for sure. But yeah, Tom, I love his relationship with B'Elanna. You guys will find out
Mm-hmm.
as we do this. You'll find that I'm kind of a romantic sap. So it's for you guys
So am
to,
I.
yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I just like him. Uh, he's not obviously he's not like the like obvious choice for sure, but that's what I don't know. I kind of like.
I think it's a
Um,
really good choice, Dan.
yeah.
Rob's kind of alluding it. He's saying Tom's journey is great. He really does develop a great deal over the show. He
Hmm.
changes a lot, and there's certainly a lot to take away from Tom Paris. Um,
Yeah, because
he's a
I like early Tom Paris. I like late Tom Paris.
mhm.
His relationship with a bunch of people on the crew, his episodes specifically, I really enjoy. Yeah. What are your kind of alternates?
um, my first alternate is the EMH from Voyager. Um, both of my alternates are kind of chosen because of their character arcs. Like I kind of just said with Tom, the change that they undergo throughout the course of the show, and the EMH is like just a walking example of um, you know being given the opportunity to live up to your potential, and grow as a person. Um, and every time I go back to Voyager, I fall more in love with that character. I think he's perfectly played by Robert Picardo. His sense of humor, I think, is top of the line, like funny Star Trek. Um, but I really identify with the growth that he undergoes early on. And
Yeah,
continues to grow.
he has a great, especially his relationship with Seven. Like it was kind of
Yeah.
almost mirrored,
Hmm.
because you know the Doctor had to make all those changes, but he was kind of the student, and now he's kind of became the teacher because he has to kind of help Seven, you know, make that same transition from, you know.
Definitely right. He takes right what you're saying is
Hmm.
absolutely correct. He takes what he learned in say the first 3 seasons of Voyager
Yeah.
as he's kind of undergoing his evolution, and definitely shares that with Seven.
Yeah.
And I guess my second alternate, and then you can go into your two,
Yeah.
would be Kira from Deep Space Nine. Same kind of deal. Her development, the changes she undergoes are just really well written, really well played by Nana Visitor. The thing I always think of with Kira is when you look at her at the beginning of Deep Space Nine, she's like barely out of the resistance. She's a former terrorist fighting the Cardassians, and she ends the show teaching the Cardassians to fight their own rebellion, and taking her experience and wisdom with that to her. I mean, to the Cardassians. I think, yeah, she does get overlooked. I think a little bit, Rob. I agree with that. I think she's really well played by Nana Visitor. I love her strength as a strong female character. At that time there weren't very many on TV, from what I understand. I was pretty young, but it certainly stood out to me as a young kid that she was a really kick butt, strong female character. And while she softens a bit as the show goes on, she kind of becomes a little less hardened coming out of the resistance. She never quite loses it. When she needs it, she has it. And I think that plays very well. And I think she's a really important reason why Deep Space Nine works for me the way it does.
Mm-hmm.
She did sink Fever very well, Nick. I agree. So, Dan, how about your two?
So my two alternates are, well, I'll just start with my second. Is Lieutenant Worf. I love Klingon, and I love Klingon culture. I love Michael Dorn. Michael Dorn as an actor. I think he does a pretty good job in Next Gen. I really enjoyed his episodes, but I really think he finds his footing in Deep Space Nine. I really do.
I agree with that. I really, yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of character development that goes on, because he kind of, the Enterprise gets destroyed. He's on a new assignment. He doesn't really know where he is in his career and stuff. And I think, I think he finds his home in Deep Space Nine, and I just really enjoy it, him as a character. And my third is Dax. I like that she has, rest in peace, Jadzia Dax, but I think there's just so much depth to that character, for sure. And I love the relationship that she has with Sisko and all the characters on Deep Space Nine. So those are my three. I guess we can definitely see what you guys have to say about your guys' favorite characters.
Yeah, Rob Chapman named off quite a few really good choices. Data, EMH, Tom, Kira, Odo, Garrick, all great.
Mm-hmm.
Some overlap there. Let's see. Please share if you haven't yet. Like, who are your favorite characters? If you have a singular, like, absolute favorite, we'd love to hear that. Yeah, Dan, I really liked your choices. That was one category that we did not really share our choices on. I didn't know coming in what Dan was going to say. He didn't know what I was going to say, and Yeah, that was
Yeah, so over the week we kind of discussed, a
mhm.
few of the categories and explained and told each other, but I think that not knowing really helps the
Yeah.
conversation and kind of helps it move. But yeah, I think Rob asked TNG Wharf or Deep Space Nine Wharf. I say I don't know. It's a tough one. I think Deep Space Nine. I think he's better, but uh, that's just my opinion. So
Yeah, it's amazing to me how well he fits into Deep Space Nine. I'm just kind of getting into the early stages of season 4 of Deep Space Nine on my current rewatch, and he's just kind of brand new to the show. And I kind of talked about this last week after having watched just one episode. But he for a character who wasn't designed to fit into that show, he really does slide right into it and becomes a part of the ensemble and adds to the kind of texture of the show. He has good relationships with um, the rest of the cast. Like he has interesting dynamics with characters like Quark and Odo and Cisco and certainly Dax. It was a really good move, I think.
yeah, because I don't know if a lot of characters could have done that, make that
Yeah,
transition from one show to the other for sure.
mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, it's certainly not as easily. Not it would have taken some doing. It would have taken some either adapting the show or adapting the character. And Worf just feels like a totally seamless um, move and really helped the character. I think getting those extra years on Deep Space Nine.
yeah,
And going back to your choice of Tom Paris, I'll just kind of say this, kind of similar to what I said with EMH, with his arc kind of being about living up to your potential. Tom Paris is a guy who, at the beginning of Voyager is kind of out of chances, and he's, literally has to get lifted out of prison to, go on this mission. And his development and growth over that period of time is really um, top of the line.
yeah,
Writing and
yeah. Because I love his development with his father because like
mhm.
over the show it kind of builds up with like he'll actually send a letter to him and then when they actually talk to Starfleet Command, his dad has a picture of him on his desk and all these things. So it's definitely great growth. I think
Yeah,
it's a lot of depth.
definitely.
It adds kind of a more human feel to a sci-fi genre
Definitely.
of show, and that's always good in my opinion to have some human aspects into it. Um,
Agreed.
yeah,
All right, so we're ready to move on. Next topic.
yeah,
Category.
I think so. So the next category, guys, is your favorite ship. I will go first since Bill went first last time.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to keep harping on Voyager, but that's my favorite. That is my favorite ship. It was tough. I would definitely go back and forth, on a lot of ships. But it's at the end of the day, I was like, all right, what ship would I want to serve on? And coming from just a smaller background, like a small town, stuff like that. I would rather enjoy a smaller ship, for sure, to feel that community for sure. But I think Voyager is my favorite ship. Yeah.
It's a good choice. I certainly love the aesthetic of Voyager too. I think it's a beautiful um, design interior wise. Like the sets are really really well done. And yeah, so fair choice.
Yeah.
Um, my choice was the Enterprise D from TNG. I guess coming at it from the same angle that Dan did, what ship would you like to serve on? Um, I kind of had to go with the D because of kind of the opposite. I come from a small town too, but I love the idea of it being sort of this city in space where, people from all different, walks of life, all different backgrounds, all different specialties it could be serving on this ship. Civilians are on the ship doing their own thing, for a study on this side of the Alpha Quadrant or whatnot. There's so much happening on the ship that I would be interested to be a part of a community that big and that diverse as far as professional, backgrounds come into play. I feel like I would learn a lot, and yeah, it's a tough one. There's a lot of, I mean, all the ships I would certainly love to wake up one morning and be on
Yeah,
any of these ships.
exactly.
That would be ideal. But if I had to pick a single one, it would be the Enterprise D.
Yeah, yeah, the
I
D.
also, yeah, I personally think that the interiors of the D, a lot of people hate on them, and I'm sure a lot of people in here probably might agree that it's like a hotel in space, and it is. But I've always loved it. I grew up on it, and it's very homey to me. Like it just feels like a place that I would never want to leave. Like you can do anything there, and
Yeah, it's probably one of my favorite bridges for sure. I think is
mhm.
the D. I like the bridge a lot.
I do too.
Yeah,
I do too.
yeah.
Um, what about your other choices, Dan?
So my other choices were the Defiant and the D. Obviously, the Defiant is just kind of definitely that small town feel for sure. I think it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just love that it's a different ship than Starfleet would uh, build, and I think that kind of makes it unique in itself. And the D obviously is
Definitely.
just uh, the D. It doesn't really need any explanation, and I think you did a great job for sure.
Thanks.
Yeah. What were your alternates?
Uh, Maybe some controversy here. My first alternate would be the NX-01. I love the idea of being the first out there, um, like the true pioneering aspect of exploration, first to see everything. That intrigues me. That would definitely push me in that direction. And I love the the look of the NX-01. It took a while to grow on me from the exterior standpoint, but the interiors I think are spectacular. I just love the whole look. I love the props. I love um, the set design. The whole production design of that ship is um, some of my favorite stuff ever in Star Trek. So I can easily imagine myself um, peeking around every corner of that ship and wanting to stay. Um, Definitely up there for me, the NX-01. Um, and I had to go with the classic 1701 Constitution class,
Connie.
the Connie.
Yeah.
It's got a. I love the retro. I mean, it wasn't retro at the time. It was certainly ahead of its time in
Mm-hmm.
1966. Groundbreaking and amazing, and it still is. It really stands up to me. I think it's actually amazing how well those sets hold up for what they are, and I love the look of the ship. I love it's similar to the NX-01. TOS does a really nice job of um, conveying this sense of being the first and really pushing new ground and exploring new areas of space, and um, that appeals to me a lot. And serving with Captain Kirk and Spock and Dr. McCoy is pretty tough to say no to. So it's kind of a standard answer, but I couldn't leave it off. So
Yeah. In regards to the NX, um, I like that was on like my maybe 4 or 5 for sure. I Yeah, I just really like, it's definitely different. But a lot of people like the refit, and I was like, oh, I wish, they could have one more season with the refit. I like the original style for sure.
I do too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing that I just discovered over the last week talking to Dan. I think Dan and I might be the two only people in the Star Trek community who
Yeah, that's for sure.
prefer the original NX-01 to the refit.
Yeah,
Um, I definitely do. I think it holds up fine the way it is, and yeah, I'm sure we'll talk more about that in the future. But um, I'm a huge fan of the NX-01 for sure.
yeah. Nix's list is the first is the D, second's the NX-01, three is Voyager. Pretty good
Voyager.
list.
It's a good list.
Yeah. Ross says he likes the Kelvin. That was a cool ship.
That
Yeah.
is a cool ship. I love the Kelvin.
Yeah.
New movies, right? Big themselves nine. It's so this is Jordan defending the JJ Enterprise, particularly in Beyond. It looks like I agree that the JJ Enterprise, Kelvin Enterprise, more properly called, looked at its best in Beyond for sure. And Excelsior is also stunning. I love the Excelsior in Star Trek 2, and especially Star Trek 6. I think the Excelsior.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that the speaking of Beyond, I just watched it this weekend, but like at the beginning, I guess like the when it gets rebuilt, that's probably my favorite. Kelvin timeline, Enterprise for sure. It definitely took some time to grow on me for sure. When I watched it in the first Star Trek '09, but slowly but surely it made.
Yeah, that was a really gradual thing for me. It took me a long time to totally warm to the design of that ship. But once it happened, it really did. I've grown to really like it, and is it exactly how I would have done it? Not that I'm a expert by any means with designing starships.
Yeah.
I probably would have swayed more closely to the original stuff, but it really has grown on me a lot, and I'm not an anti by any means.
Yeah, especially the inside too. The inside, I was just like, it might be a little bit too over the top, but it slowly, grew on me for sure.
I think the bridge and Beyond, not that we've seen much of it
Yeah.
for long, has a really good look. It's a little less overly bright white, a little more textured, a little more dark, a little more cinematically lit, I think.
Yeah.
So definitely a lot of potential for still more improvement if they keep that series going, which I think they do.
Yeah.
So. Yep. And the Franklin was a nice NX-01 era ship. I agree with that. I love the Franklin.
Yeah.
It's a great point by Nick.
Yeah, that is. That definitely is.
That's 100% what happens, Nick. I agree.
Yeah, and I think that's going to happen with Discovery for sure.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't like it right now, and I feel like the more time people spend with the crew and get emotionally attached to it, they won't mind the ship at all.
Exactly. That's 100% what happens.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
Mm-hmm.
Great point. Yeah.
Yeah, so next up on our list is favorite captains. So do you want to go with your favorite captain?
Sure. Do you want to talk about maybe this is probably going to be this will be our most abbreviated segment, because we're going to be talking more about this topic as a whole, more broadly in the very near future. So I'm not going to name any more than one. I'm just going to talk about one, my singular favorite captain, which is Picard is my 100% favorite captain. He is, if I could include captains with my character's choices from earlier, I would choose Picard. Picard is the character from fiction of any kind that I most strive to be like. He is, to me, the perfect character. I just have I grew up with him as my hero, my idol, and he continues to be. So Captain Picard is certainly my favorite, but I think I'm just going to kind of leave it at that for right now.
Yeah, so my favorite captain is Kirk. Shatner's Kirk. I don't know what it is, but I just love Captain Kirk. I'll definitely, I guess, leave it at that. Tune in next week to hear a discussion about captains, and we might have a debate on our hands of which Picard versus Kirk. But definitely tune in next week for that. So we'd like to hear what your guys' favorite captain is, though, right now.
Rob, who did you think Dan was going to say?
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Oh, you didn't see that coming. Hmm. Rob's is Janeway. Janeway is a great choice. I definitely like her as a captain for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I love them all. I have a really hard time, um, like ranking them because I feel like I'm insulting somebody, and I really do think they're all great characters played by great actors. Um, and yeah, Janeway, for all the reasons Voyager needed her to be great, she is great. She's the mother of that ship, and yeah, like I said, I don't want to go into too much detail with the captain's discussion because our whole episode next week is gonna be focused on the captains. So I kind of want to leave some of this stuff for next week, but definitely agree that Janeway is a great character, and
Yeah.
Nick's getting cute, throwing Riker into that mix. But he is a captain now, I guess. Strong, loyal, determined. Yeah, you're right, Rob.
So on the opposite of captains, we're gonna move on to villains. Try to get the conversation, off captains because we definitely want to save it for next week for sure. So my favorite villain,
ECH, Rob,
is Dukat. Gul Dukat.
Yeah.
I love him as a character. He has such great character arcs, character development. I think he does relate to Cisco because I mean he is a family man. He is a commander and high up in his what faction he's from. But I just love Dukat because all like through you could watch an episode, you could root for him, you could laugh, you could hate him all in one episode, and that's what I love about Dukat, for sure.
Yeah, my choice is Dukat as well. This is one where we are 100% in agreement. Everything Dan just said is 100% right. I love the way you just put that, Dan, that you can laugh with him, laugh at him, love him and hate him all in the same episode. That happens, and that's the mark of a great villain. He evolves over the course of the show. There are periods of the show where you almost think he's a friend. He could sway that way if the politics of the situation are going that way. He can easily be a friend. He can be an ally situationally, I guess. But over the course of the show, he's well developed. Some people take issue with maybe the very last chapter of his development, the last handful of episodes of Deep Space Nine. Some people might take issue with, but it doesn't bother me at all. I think what happens to him is well earned. With what happens with his daughter, and like I don't want to get into like hardcore spoiler territory because I know there are people thinking of one person in particular who I don't think is here right now, but I think watches or has indicated that he's going to watch us on the archive, I guess you could say, and he is just now getting into Deep Space Nine. So I don't want to get into too many spoilers, but yeah, Dukat's certainly very well developed and is a great character in his own right. I mean, it's almost unfair to just like lob him into a villain's category because he's more than just like a one-off
bad guy. Bad guy.
He's really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're talking about in chat about Q. We had the same discussion.
We did.
We just kind of discussed like, is Q even a villain?
Mm-hmm.
It's just I don't know, because definitely early on TNG, I would consider him a villain, but throughout TNG and into Voyager, like, is he actually a villain?
Yeah, he's I think a better way to describe him, aside from villain, is he's an antagonist. I mean, he's a little more of a villain. Kind of implies, out to do bad stuff for bad reasons. And Q is somebody who typically has a good reason for everything he's doing. Like he maybe not super early on with like Encounter at Farpoint, but in many of the episodes later, um, he's not, his reasons are not unfounded for what he's doing to the crew. Um, so I tend to not consider him a villain in the classic sense of the word. So I'll tell you right now, he's not on my list. He's a great character. I love Q. I love John
Yeah,
Delancey.
yeah.
But I don't. I didn't include him in this particular list.
I think he has such a big, character arc because like in TNG they're like trying to, you know, beat him almost, but like in Voyager, I hate to keep bringing back Voyager, but the Voyager crew ends up helping Q. So it's just like I don't know, it's a big difference in uh,
Yeah,
the character for sure.
agreed. So Dan, I forget who went first here. Was this? I think it was you. So
Yeah,
you're up for your
top five
runners
movies.
up.
Oh, my runners up. Okay.
Yeah.
This is where I might make some more waves, is with the runner up. So my first runner up is Khan. Obviously, he
Yeah.
is really iconic when you think of Star Trek. I like the character. Um, Definitely, Wrath of Khan was great. I think he was great in there. I think in Into Darkness, that's kind of a different story. Uh, yeah,
A discussion unto itself.
yeah, for
Absolutely.
sure. Um, which I won't bring up now, but I guess my third one, and this one might make a lot of people um, be like, "Oh, why did he choose that?" But I just have this personal, almost vendetta with the Borg Queen. I think I mean, she's a great character. It's kind of like that, you know, innocent but arrogant and very, you know, I'm better than you and stuff like that. And I just every time I see her on screen, whether it be in the movies or on TV shows, I'm almost like I want her to you know perish and stuff. So I just have that connection with the Borg Queen. Um, what are your runner-ups, Bill?
Khan is my first runner-up for sure. Specifically Montalban Khan.
Yeah,
He is his physicality, the way Montalban plays him, makes him like this perfect antagonist for Kirk. At any moment, you feel like he could do Kirk in, especially in Space Seed when he's actually in the same physical space as Kirk. Um, but I'm going to be talking about Khan again in a few minutes, more related to that movie in particular. But Montalban's iconic as Khan. He's larger than life. He's um, you know, I don't know what more is there to say.
yeah, exactly. It's just
He's
yeah,
it's kind of indisputable. He's like I said, permeated into the pop culture on his own right, and yeah, he's I don't want to say too much more because it's more about the movie itself.
yeah,
And I'll save that for maybe our
hmm
next segment.
yeah.
But he's my first runner-up, Khan, and my second runner-up is a one-off TOS choice. I went with the Romulan commander from Balance of Terror, um, an unnamed character. We never got his actual name, but I love Balance of Terror. I love that he's just a guy. Like he's a guy commanding this Romulan ship who doesn't necessarily agree with the orders he's given to go into Federation space and start wreaking havoc. He expressed doubt and is kind of just trying to get through the mission and get his crew home. And the exchange between him and Kirk at the end of the episode always sticks with me, where he says, in another lifetime we could have been friends, or I could have called you friend. I think he says. They don't treat him like a villain. I know I kind of just excused Q from this list for the same kind of reason, but he is in that he's creating a lot of havoc, and he's blowing up Federation star bases and such, Starfleet star bases, I guess. But he's not treated like a bad guy. He's treated like a guy who's serving his country, his home world, and he's doing what he has to do. And anybody who hasn't seen Balance of Terror recently should go give it another look. It's a classic piece of television, and a big part of why is Mark Leonard as the Romulan commander. And he's my runner-up.
Yeah, because I think a lot of TOS episodes have themes or characters like that. That it's kind of like more deeper, deeper than just a typical villain. You just want to see him, die, be perished. But
the TOS villains aren't typically clear-cut bad guys. There's a reason for what they're doing. They're typically misunderstood or just there's more to them than just a mustache twirling bad guy who's doing bad things just to do bad things. And he's the one who, other than Khan, stands out to me the most from that run of characters. But there are quite a few others that I could easily name, specifically from TOS. I'm thinking of a couple of different Klingons. Kor and Kang specifically stand out to me as a really good character.
Yeah.
And there's more, but we could spend a long time talking about that. So.
Yeah, Ross says Moriarty is the best villain who never got his own film.
Moriarty's a great character.
Yeah, love that
great
episode.
Choice. Yep.
Yeah.
What else do we have here? I see some Kai Wynn talk.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's an interesting choice too.
Yeah.
That's a good one. She's another one that's kind of hard. I have a hard time calling her a villain. She's a pain. For Sisko,
just like
for
Q,
sure.
yeah.
And by the end, she's doing some bad stuff. That's for sure. She's up to no good at the end. She's kind of manipulated into that kind of stuff. And
you see what Nick said?
Real villains are. That's funny.
Yeah, and Robin Ross agree with me about the Borg Queen. Yeah, that's why I put her on my list, is because I think she makes a great villain. For sure.
She definitely, yeah. First Contact in particular, she is skin-crawlingly, memorably awesome.
Yeah.
And, Alice Krige is amazing.
Yeah.
In First Contact playing the Borg Queen.
Yeah.
So I sign off on that. That's a good call. And I'm sure we'll talk a lot. I mean, we could certainly, we haven't talked about this specifically, but the Borg as a whole are a topic ripe for discussion. That I'm sure.
Yeah, because
we can tackle. Because there's a lot of.
Like an alien race, a whole alien race could be considered a villain, and like we could make a whole episode about alien races and all that stuff. But I guess moving on to movies, for sure. I can't remember who went first last time.
I think that was you. I think you did villains first.
Okay. So, I guess you. Well, I guess we can both go. I guess because.
Yeah, we had the same number one choice. I'm sure everybody can probably guess what that is. It's the Wrath of Khan. Kind of going back to what I was saying about Khan, I kind of wanted to. Well, I didn't want to get into this because I knew this was coming, but I love the gutsiness of taking the Wrath of Khan and making it like a retelling of Moby Dick, but making the antagonist Captain Ahab. Khan is completely engulfed and lost in his, need for revenge, just like Captain Ahab is, and just like Captain Picard is in another movie that we're going to be talking about in a few minutes, I'm sure. At least I will be. Khan is just such a dynamic character in The Wrath of Khan. He's more than just a villain. He's like the other half of that movie. I don't know that his screen time completely equals Shatner as Kirk, but it feels like it does. He feels like he fills that movie in a way that antagonists don't often do. But The Wrath of Khan is a textured, layered, brilliant movie about aging and about death and about choices in life that catch up to you and things that have consequences that don't hit you for years after you've made the choice to do whatever you do. Um, so it's clear cut for me. I know it's a cliche, like standard choice, but I had the opportunity. It was in September. One of my local movie theaters was running the Wrath of Khan um, in a retro cinema type deal that they have going on. Every couple of weeks they have an old movie play on Tuesday and Wednesday nights. And the nerd that I am, I went both nights. I watched the Wrath of Khan Tuesday and Wednesday night, once by myself and once with my dad. And it plays as well as any movie that has come in the 30 years, 40, 35 years, I think, since that movie's come out in 1982. It holds up incredibly well. It's the music by James Horner is incredible, stands up. So yeah, it's not a whole lot more needs to be said about it because it's been talked about ad nauseum, but it is, to me, pretty clearly the number one, my favorite Star Trek movie.
It is also my number one because it's just so iconic. When I think of Star Trek movies, I think of Wrath of Khan. It has it all. It has space battles. It has hand-to-hand combats, going to different planets, and a little romance and stuff like that. It just has everything.
It does.
For sure.
It hits all the bases in a way that a lot of these movies might only hit two of them. Like it really does round the bases in a unique way for Star Trek movies, for me at least.
Yeah. Yeah, it's looking like chat is a little bit not undecided, but
all kinds of choices.
Yeah.
See, Final Frontier getting some love from Nick.
Yeah. First Contact too. That's surprising. So I might make some more waves here too, but so my second and third choice. So my second choice is Undiscovered Country. I just love that movie. And the third is Beyond. So I mean, let all the hate comments come in, but third is Beyond for sure for me. Bill, what are your other alternates?
Well, I'll tell you this: your 2 and 3 are my 4 and 5, so they're the two that just missed mine. So don't feel bad about Beyond.
Okay.
That's a great choice. I love Star Trek Beyond. I just watched it the other night too, and I think it holds up really well. But my first alternate would be The Voyage Home. I love how gutsy The Voyage Home is. I love that it's completely a departure from the other movies. To go from Star Trek 2 and Star Trek 3, which were kind of dark, not a lot of good stuff happening in those movies, and making a conscious decision to kind of make a light comedy is just something that doesn't happen, and I don't think will ever happen again. And I love how gutsy it is, and it's unapologetic about its message, and the comedy just really holds up for me every time I watch it. And there's a reason why, at least in my experience, when I try to, put a friend who isn't like me into Star Trek in front of a Star Trek movie, that's the one that just consistently works. They might not respond to everything that I show them, but that movie they, tend to enjoy, and it stands on its own and works for just about anybody because of the humor, because of the the pretty universal message, I think, that most people can get behind.
I like that movie because I like that movie because it's really unique, and it's a really fun movie. And it's not your typical movie because they're not on a starship, they're not in some foreign planet, and that's what I really like about it. So
when you think of other movie franchises, I have a hard time envisioning a lot of these big movie franchises kind of taking such a big departure from what their typical, run-of-the-mill movie would be. And that movie had the guts to do it, and it succeeded on every level for me, at least. And my second one is First Contact. I love Star Trek First Contact. It lays the groundwork for Star Trek history. It fills a lot of gaps. And it makes... Of the TNG movies, I think it makes the best use of the crew. Not everybody gets like a shining moment. Not every single character does, but having sort of 3 individual stories going on with Picard dealing with the Borg on the ship, and Riker down on the planet with Zephyr Cochrane, and Data with the Borg Queen. Like, each of those three stories kind of works on its own and gives different characters things to do that give them a purpose in the movie, which TNG movies struggle to do. And similar to The Voyage Home, it has some comedy in it that works well.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly not the light movie that 4 is, but it has some of that, light humor that Voyage Home does have. And it's just really cinematic. It looks really good.
Mm-hmm.
It's really well directed by Frakes. It never ceases to amaze me when I watch that. I've seen things that say like they had 6 or 7 Borg costumes to use throughout the production of the movie, and you fooled me. It looks like that ship's swarming with Borg. It's just really well done, really well directed, really well designed, and yeah, I love that it explains how Star Trek started. Brandon Braga, I think it was Braga on the commentary, calls
Mm-hmm.
the end like the Star Trek nativity scene, and that is kind of what it is. It's Star Trek being born, the way we know what Star Trek is.
Mm-hmm.
So they're my 2, but your 2 are my 4 and 5.
Yeah.
Undiscovered Country would be my 4, and Beyond would be my 5.
Yeah, because Undiscovered Country has some good themes in it that I feel like we could use in today's. Yeah, they're also talking about Final Frontier in the chat. So maybe I know you have some pretty good thoughts on that if you'd like to share, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I am not a Final Frontier hater like many are. There are a lot of people who will stand on a soapbox and really believe that the Final Frontier is the worst 2 hours of Star Trek ever produced, and I just don't agree. It's flawed. I don't claim to love it by any means. It's towards the bottom of my list, but it has moments in it that I love. I think it's certainly got some value to it that I think a lot of people tend to overlook. And Nick, you make a lot of good points. I hear you. And I'm sure Star Trek V is something that I'm interested in talking about in the future, maybe in a little more depth, a little more detail. So stay tuned.
Yeah.
I don't know when that'll happen, but I can't promise it'll be like in the immediate future, but it's definitely something that's on our radar.
Yeah.
For sure. And the more you guys talk about it, the more it's going to make us want to do it, because we're interested to hear your guys' thoughts on it, and it certainly looks like you guys have some thoughts on it.
Yeah, one last thing I'd like to make about the movies too. The only reason I like motion picture is because when they introduce the ship, at just such beautiful angles, and I don't know, I just love that. All that work that went into that.
I can make a case that that's my favorite scene of anything ever. Like, I could just put that on with, put my feet up and have a beer and just watch that scene like over and over again for the music, for the visuals. Yeah, so I agree with you.
Yeah, I love seeing starships in dry dock and all their glory shots and stuff like that. It's just like, yeah, Nick saying the slow motion picture. It is a slow movie for sure. Yeah.
But I love the motion picture, so maybe there's a topic there too.
Yeah.
Because I'm a defender.
Yeah. So I guess our next segment is going to be favorite episodes from each series. So guys, just realize that there's so many episodes that we could choose from. These are just because we're going to have more than one for sure, but I think that there's going to be a lot of episodes, and like a lot of episodes that can be made for the best. These are just our favorite. So I guess I'll just go first with TOS.
Yeah.
So my favorite TOS episode is Arena. I think that is just like the iconic TOS episode. I laugh every time. Makes me laugh, and when I think of TOS, I think of Arena. So that's mine. What's your favorite TOS episode?
Arena is a good choice. It is certainly iconic. But my choice is The City on the Edge of Forever. It's like the standard cliche choice. I know it's boring. You're probably putting people to sleep just saying the name. That's what everybody always says ever.
Yeah.
But I can't argue with it. I think it's so many things at once. Like it's to me, it always amazes me that it's an hour of TV that starts with, if you don't know what you're getting into and you sit down and watch that episode, it starts out with getting to this planet. It's a spaceship. They're studying time ripples, and it's like big science fiction concept, and they find the Guardian of Forever, and this thing is talking to them. They're in 19th New York, and it being like an old-fashioned 1930s classic movie love story. It's like the perfect example of what Star Trek can do as far as storytelling goes. How many different ways it can go, how many different directions it can take all in one thing. And I don't think Shatner was ever better than he was in that episode. I could certainly make a case that 2 and maybe 3, he's as good as he ever was, but he's legitimately classic movie star great in The City on the Edge of Forever with Joan Collins. I totally buy the love story. I totally buy the big science fiction idea of it. It really set the tone for the way time travel would be handled in Star Trek going forward, with the constant discussions of every time travel is involved that it's going to change history and all these things could happen or not happen based on anything we do in the past. Sitting on the Edge of Forever kind of, at least in my recollection, sets the tone for that in a big way. And it makes great use of the characters, Kirk and Spock in particular. McCoy gets some great things to do as well. And Joan Collins is a great role. It gives a great performance as Edith Keeler. So that's my choice for TOS. Boring, but true.
Yeah. I always love the romance ones for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think someone Ross was saying The Devil in the Dark. Nick saying Mirror Mirror. I love Mirror Universe episodes. Especially in TOS, they make me laugh. I think just to make a TOS Mirror Mirror universe, all you need to do is put a mustache on someone, and then it's Mirror Mirror.
Mirror is a classic.
Yeah.
And Ross, I agree with you. Devil in the Dark is would probably be my number 2. I love The Devil in the Dark, and then it gets better every time I go back to it. So no disrespect there. Yep. So you want to name your TNG, Dan?
Yeah. So my TNG is Chain of Command.
Great choice.
Yeah. I think, I don't know, it's just one of my favorites. And when I think back, because I haven't watched it for a while, but when I think back, or when I was trying to, research, and I think of this episode, and I don't know, I liked it. Stood out to me as a TNG episode for sure. What's your next gen?
Yeah. My TNG is, you're probably going to gather a pattern here with being kind of boring. Standard choices here, but I got to go with the Best of Both Worlds.
Oh yeah, yep. I could have guessed that.
There were some others, including Chain of Command, that are right in my conversation for that. Measure of a Man, I'm seeing getting named right now, and that's right there with it. But the Best of Both Worlds is really uniquely cinematic for TV in 1989, 1990. I saw that when the Star Trek TNG Blu-rays were coming out. There was, for the first 3 seasons, like a movie theater event they would do. I don't know if anybody else saw it or ever got to do it, but in like the weekend before TOS or TNG season 3 came out on Blu-ray, there was a one-night event where you could go watch the Best of Both Worlds in a theater. Huh. And it struck me how really well it held up on the big screen. It's really well shot. They put a little extra juice into it, seemingly, from a production angle, being a big season finale, and I think they knew what the stakes were for the show at that time. And I can't speak to. I wasn't old enough to experience the summer of that cliffhanger, being left hanging with Is Picard going to be brought back or not? Blah blah blah. Like I didn't get to see that,
Mm-hmm.
but on its own, it works. Without having that summer in between episodes, it still holds up. The stakes and everything really hold up, and there are really good dramatic moments in it for Riker and for Picard, particularly in part one. Part two maybe is a little bit of a step down, but part one, there's scenes I'm thinking of Picard kind of taking a tour through the ship on the eve of battle, talking to Guinan. That scene stands out to me as like truly great, and I just really identify with Riker's kind of career crossroads dilemma as well. So it's a classic, iconic, standard choice, but it's kind of the easy one for me. There are others that could have easily, like I said, been the one, but Nick, you're saying you saw Best of Both Worlds in theaters, and it should have been better. I'd be interested to hear your knocks on the Best of Both Worlds for sure. So type us a novel about what you didn't like. I'm interested.
Yeah, I mean, going back to Chain of Command, I love Patrick Stewart, and I think he did very well. I can't remember it. Was it there 4 lights? What's the
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Great messages about torture and all kind of that Chain of Command's a classic.
Yeah.
All the way, all around. Ross is citing Parallels. That's a good episode.
Yeah, that's a really good episode.
Got some DS9 getting thrown out there ahead of us, but you got some good choices there, Rob.
Yeah, and Ross was asking about animated series, and I was like, no comment.
I'll say that Dan and I are not the biggest animated series fans.
Yeah.
So you're probably not going to find a whole lot of discussion about the animated series with us. You never know, but
yeah,
you might need to find that discussion somewhere else. I certainly can't claim to be an expert on it. I've seen it. I enjoyed it when I was young, but I can't claim to be a fan of it these days. So, there. So, you have a Deep Space Nine choice ready, Dan?
You can go.
I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
Okay. My choice for Deep Space Nine is In the Pale Moonlight. Yet again, I know it's a boring choice, because it's routinely cited as the best Deep Space Nine episode. But I agree with it. I think it best epitomizes what Deep Space Nine's potential was, and it's certainly controversial. It sparks conversation about what's right and wrong. In what they're dealing with. But Avery Brooks gives a tremendous performance. He's amazing, conveying his, difficulty with the situation for sure. It never looks easy. It never looks like it's like taken for granted. It's weighing on him, and it's well played dramatically. His stuff with Garak is amazing. Garak has
Love Garak.
I think that might be Garak at his best. I just when I think of In the Pale Moonlight, I think of that scene at the end between Garak and Sisko in Garak's shop, talking about what just happened, and that's some of the best Star Trek I've ever seen that I can think of. It's just incredibly well written. It's dark and it's kind of uncomfortable territory for Star Trek, for sure. It's not what people expect out of Star Trek. It tends to be more, it rightfully so. It's typically more optimistic than that. But I love that Deep Space Nine goes there. I love that Deep Space Nine tackles darker themes and darker situations and pushes the envelope and tests, the Star Trek, the Roddenberry philosophy and Roddenberry way of looking at things. Deep Space Nine pushes that and forces its characters to, try to hold on to it through these difficult circumstances. And I think In the Pale Moonlight does that the best. I think it's Deep Space Nine achieving its potential, achieving its concept, and achieving its what it set out to do the best. So.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. That's my favorite episode in the Pale Moonlight. I picked two other ones just because I guessed that we would have the same feeling about it. So my other two are The Visitor. That was like an emotional roller coaster for me for sure.
Yeah.
I just love the dynamic between Cisco and his son, and how far he would go for sure. Also, just this is just random episode, but Let He Who Is Without Sin. Bill's laughing because he knows what's going, but it's this episode where they go to I think it's Ryza,
Yeah.
and they and there's this interaction between Worf and Jadzia Dax. It is so funny and so cheesy and so awesome. I love it. So if you guys haven't seen that episode, go watch it because it is it's hilarious.
Yeah. I can't claim to love that episode at all, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's corny.
Yeah.
It's yeah, camp at its best.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just watched The Visitor the other night, and I couldn't agree more. That is, great science fiction, great TV. Just let alone Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
Avery Brooks is incredible. Tony Todd playing the older Jake is off the charts great. Yeah, it's way up there for me. It's definitely in the conversation. It might be my one runner up to In the Pale Moonlight. And yeah, that's as good as it gets all around.
Yeah.
So I couldn't agree more.
Yep.
Seeing some other episodes getting named, The Wire, which is Garak's kind of first big episode.
Yeah.
I agree with that. That's a great episode.
I like Garak as a character in all his episodes. Yeah.
Yeah. Far Beyond the Stars, Ross mentioned, is way up there for me too. I love that episode. And a little up further, I see Rob mentioning the episode with Lal, the offspring from TNG. That's also a classic.
Yeah.
Great one. And Nick's mentioning The Naked Now and shrugging and yeah, no thanks. But yeah, Hard Time is great.
Yeah,
Rob. Hard Time is an excellent episode. That's I when I think of Kalmini as O'Brien, that's the one that I think of the most.
He does a great job in that.
Yeah. All right, ready for Voyager?
Yes. I guess I'll go from mine. So this is the one that I have a few, just because there was just so many good ones, and I really like Voyager. So I guess my first choice is Timeless. I think it was just a really big episode, and I think it was like their 100th episode, right, Bill?
It was.
And they chose to go with Harry Kim and Chakotay to kind of lead that. But it has so many great, not just the Harry and Chakotay thing. There's other aspects that I love about it. Seven gets a little bit tipsy, and yeah, it's funny.
Great scene.
Yeah. Yeah. So my other choices are Someone to Watch Over Me. I love the romance between the Doctor and Seven of Nine, and Seven's attempt to find love. Also Resolutions. You're sensing a pattern here. Yeah, definitely. So those are my three top for Voyager.
Timeless is definitely in the conversation for me. I love Timeless. I love the editing in that, like the intercutting between the different time periods. It's just really well done, really well produced. Really big. The visual effects in that stand out really well, hold up really well. But I went with Scorpion, the two-parter that introduced Seven of Nine, Species 8472, and I think that's kind of like the reboot button that Voyager maybe kind of needed at the time. It gave the show a shot in the arm that was a gutsy thing to do, in that introducing a character like Seven of Nine could have very easily gone wrong. The reasons for introducing the character may not have been pure from a network standpoint. Like, I think the reasons for doing it are obvious. But dramatically speaking, it worked really well. I love the character. I think she adds a lot to the show. And just as a from a production standpoint, I think Scorpion's really well done. I think of the score. I think of the visuals. I think I think that was the first time that I can think of where they had the ability to create a character like Species 8472, completely computer generated, completely alien looking, not just an actor with something on their forehead or something on their nose, just a completely other looking thing, adversary. And they're scary and intimidating, and it just really works for me. It holds up really well. And when I think of Voyager, I tend to think of that. That's something that I can kind of pop in at any time, and it works.
So, yeah, it's I don't know. It's one of those episodes. It's like when you hear what it's about, it's like, oh my gosh, because like you throughout every single episode or series, you kind of get conditioned to think like, oh, the Borg is like the biggest, baddest kid on the block. But then you kind of discover like this new species that the Borg can't handle, and it's just like one of those episodes where you like to watch and find out what happens.
Yeah, I always think of that scene where Voyager's like warping along, and like I forget the number of them, but there's like dozens of Borg cubes that are just like warping right past him, getting chased by 8472, and it's got this big musical cue that's like movie quality. Like I think Jerry Goldsmith wrote it for one of the movies.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing that for the first time and being like, wow, this show is kicking butt.
Yeah.
This show is hitting it. So it really that one is usually what comes to mind immediately when I think of Voyager. But Timeless is right there. Year of Hell is up there for me.
Yeah. A Day of Honor is also one of Bill and I's favorites for sure. It's kind of
love Day of Honor.
Definitely has a theme that's not Star Trek isn't known for, but I think, and also B'Elanna and Tom kind of announce their love for sure.
Yeah, great point, Nick. The fear in Kim and Chakotay's eyes. That whole scene is just really, really good.
Yeah.
They do. Yeah, that's good. Correct, Ross and Enterprise, Silent Enemy. They did the same thing with computer-generated alien.
Yeah.
I see some good choices for Voyager getting thrown out there. I love Barge of the Dead. I like that episode. Endgame, The Raven. Yeah, Tuvix. I love Tuvix.
Yeah.
Basics is good. There's a lot of good. Voyager's Counterpoint. I see Counterpoint's a big favorite of mine. I think Counterpoint's great. Jetrel is good. Tinker Tenor, Dr. Spy.
Yeah, I love that.
Fun.
Yeah,
that's a fun episode. Future's End is a blast. There's Voyager gets a lot of takes a lot of hits, takes a lot of knocks, but there's a ton of great Star Trek in there. I wish more people would give it a chance. Macrocosm's an interesting one, Rob. I don't want to go off on too long of a tangent here, but Macrocosm is an interesting choice. That's a good one. I love the editing in that. I love the structure of it. I love that it's like so unapologetically just action adventure, like kick butt Captain Janeway stuff. That's a good. I'm with you. A lot of people don't like that one, but I kind of do. Yeah.
So I guess our last series, yeah.
Yep.
Enterprise.
Yep.
Yeah, so I guess I'll go first. So the first, I guess, because I have two that I really liked. One's kind of predictable. The other one's like, but I really enjoyed it. The first one I think is The Forge. I like that.
Hmm.
That one for sure. The catwalk was kind of an interesting theme. I just kind of like this survivability aspect of it.
Yeah.
For sure. I had never seen anything like that. So, and those are the because I haven't seen Enterprise in a long time. So those are the kind of when I look back and be like, oh, what other episodes? These ones kind of stood out to me. The Forge being kind of a little bit more, but the Catwalk is the one when I thought back, I remembered it. So, what's your
Yeah. The
favorites?
Catwalk's a good choice. I like the Catwalk.
Yeah,
And the Forge is a classic. The Forge is
yeah,
that entire run, that 3 episode
yeah.
arc is some of the best, some of my favorite Star Trek ever.
Mm-hmm.
But my choice for Enterprise is Similitude. That's the for those of you who may not know Enterprise titles. I know a lot of people aren't as big into Enterprise, but
Mm-hmm.
Trip gets critically injured. It's in the middle of the Xindi season 3 arc. Trip gets critically injured, and Dr. Phlox has to clone him. And this clone will only live for, I believe it's like 14 days. It lives an entire lifespan, and shenanigans happen, and lots of moral questions are posed, and difficult choices are made. And I think it's I think it's really well acted by the entire cast, but notably the big three, and then John Billingsley as Dr. Phlox, I think is spectacular in kind of limited screen time in it, but he's really memorably great. Musical score in that is great.
Yeah,
The visuals in the nebula, or I don't
yeah.
think it's a nebula, but this
It's a yeah,
like a metal. Yeah, there's some really memorable imagery in it. It's dramatically interesting. It's Tuvix is very similar. I love Tuvix, but I prefer Similitude. I think the stakes in Similitude are a little higher, um, and yeah, I think it's Enterprise at its best, and I'm the resident Enterprise apologist around here. I love Enterprise, um, so I love a lot of Enterprise, but that one I have been pretty consistent on. I haven't changed my opinion much since Enterprise was on. As Enterprise's kind of finest hour. But my second choice to that would probably be The Forge, or The Forge and its 2 episodes that come after it. They
yeah.
kind of form that 3-parter.
Mm-hmm.
But if anybody out there hasn't totally delved into Enterprise yet and is struggling to kind of decide is it for me or not, Similitude might be a good thing to check in with to see if you're inclined to it.
Yeah.
I don't know much like the episode of Phlox. Yeah, it's a good choice, Rob. It's a 2-parter. That kind of sets up and explains the difference in appearances
Yeah.
for the Klingons.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good 2-parter. Glad to see Ross agrees with me. Similitude is the greatest Enterprise episode. It's always nice.
Yeah.
See somebody agree. Yeah, Rob, definitely. I would definitely recommend going back and checking it out, and let us know what you think.
All right. Well, now it's kind of the big grand finale here.
Yep.
This one might make some waves for sure. Series, and this is probably one of the toughest things, to kind of nail down because definitely love all of the series is for sure.
Yeah, this is to me, unlike some of these other categories, really kind of like picking your favorite child, because I really do love all 5 of them. 5, not 6. 6 would be the animated series at this point. It does
Yeah.
not count.
Ross is joking in chat about that.
Of the 5 main series, it's really tough to pick. Who's going first here?
I don't know. It's up to you, but yeah.
Do you want to name the number 1 and work our way down, or do you want to work our way up? Do you have a preference?
I don't have a preference.
No preference.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say that my favorite series is pains me to pick one. But my
Uh,
favorite series, if I had to pick, you put a gun to my head and make me pick. I'm gonna say TOS.
wow.
And yeah, it's not an easy call. But when I think, kind of like what I was just talking about with the villains, and Dan brought it up, I think first. Um, you know, TOS is just incredibly ahead of its time. It gets it gets knocked for, its very 60s look and feel, and um, it hasn't aged 100% well in every facet, but in so many ways, it really was ahead of its time, and it holds up very well. I love the way that it tackles its antagonists, like we were talking about earlier. Like it's never that easy. It's never something as simple as, oh, that there is a bad guy and we're gonna go blow him up. Like it's always more of a complicated, you know, moral dilemma. There's a reason for why the antagonist of the week is doing what they're doing. And it's typically having more to do with us, like our inability to sometimes understand and having to come to a point where we do understand, what's going on. And and many of the episodes kind of end with that understanding being reached. And like I think of episodes like Devil in the Dark and even like Mirror Mirror, where it doesn't end with um, even Arena. Dan, your choice. It could have ended with Kirk, plunging that thing into the
Yeah,
Gorn
but he,
captain's chest, but he
yeah,
doesn't.
yeah, he doesn't.
He makes the other choice, and just the character interplay between Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, I think is something that, in that unique way where it's like these three friends, the way they convey friendship in that show is something that I don't think is ever really matched. And the charm that Nick is mentioning here in the chat, it has a charm that is undeniable to me. That's what it really is. I think that kind of sets it over the edge. Once I get into a rhythm with it, like if I get into it and I watch it in full, like if I'm doing a rewatch and I just fall into it, that's what I find myself like latching onto. It's the charm and the kind of camp and some of the silliness I just kind of accept as what it is, and makes me love it even more. So yeah, that would be my number one.
Wow, I'm actually really surprised. You made a good point. I'm just, yeah, didn't expect that.
Yeah, well, happy to surprise.
Yeah. So my number one is Deep Space Nine. I think
Wow,
it
surprised me.
it has everything. It has great character development. It has great um, villains, characters, everything. I think because at first I was really skeptical. I was like I was just putting it off when I was watching everything, and I was, Deep Space Nine surprised me, and that it's considered my favorite. Um, yeah,
Surprised me. I didn't expect that.
yeah.
That
So
was definitely in the conversation for me as well.
yeah,
And I keep saying that, but these are all good choices. And yeah, Deep Space Nine. Um, I had Deep Space Nine as my 3, and I had TNG as my 2.
okay.
I'll just say that. TNG, I could have easily picked as my number 1, but Dan, I kind of already told you this behind the scenes, but like TNG, my struggle with TNG is for a 7-year show. I do think that there is, a lot of these series, the modern series especially, struggle getting off on the right foot right away. The first couple of seasons tend to be a little bit rough, but never more so than TNG. It takes a little while to really get going, and it almost becomes a different show in season 3. And then I think season 7 is kind of a dip as well. So kind of a tiebreaker that swayed me away from TNG was, having 3 seasons that are significantly, I would say, less great than the other 4 in the middle there. But I would say that, in my opinion, I think like that seasons 3, 4, and 5 run of TNG is probably my favorite chunk of Star Trek. That run of episodes
Mhm.
is pretty consistently great, and you'll find a lot of my all-time favorites in that run. But I went with TOS for being groundbreaking, and I guess being first
Yeah.
and kind of setting the tone and holding up as well as I actually think it kind of really does for all its faults. But Deep Space Nine is in the conversation as well for, all the things that, people always say, the long run of great characters, you know, being kind of on the forefront of serialized storytelling on TV.
Yeah.
Not a lot of TV shows were doing that in prime time in, the mid 90s, late 90s, but DS9 did. So it's right
Yeah.
up there.
Yeah. Nick
It's
saying
a
that
great choice.
it took a long time to hit its stride.
Mhm.
I think all of the shows kind of suffered from that it took a little bit some time to gain its footing. But I think just DS9 just I don't know. I really liked it. My second is probably no surprise, which might make waves, but it's Voyager. I have a special place in my heart because Voyager was kind of the first, as you guys know, the first series that I went through. And I think just from season 4 to season 6, I think I loved that big chunk of Trek. And my third choice is TNG, The Next Generation. And then my fourth being TOS, and then fifth being Enterprise. But I think those four could be interchanged easily. Just be the one that I'm watching for sure.
Mhm.
But yeah,
And I guess the controversy that I would instill, I guess, or bring on would be that I would probably rank Enterprise above Voyager if I had to do that.
Whoa.
I know.
No.
That's
Killing me.
that's a tough thing for a lot of people to hear.
Yeah.
But I do I think that's what I would do if I had to rank them. But that's no disrespect to Voyager. I love Voyager.
Yeah.
I'm watching Voyager now, and I fall right into it, and I love those characters. I love. Like I've talked to you about it before, but Voyager really conveys that sense of family among the crew.
You see what Nick said?
Sorry, Nick. I said it. I've been saying it since I started this, and I've said it on Twitter since long before this that I am the resident Enterprise apologist that you'll probably ever meet. But Voyager really does convey that sense of family better than anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Phantom Menace juice. No. I can promise you I'm not drinking that. But yeah, no disrespect to Voyager. I love Voyager. And like I said, it's really picking between my kids, and I don't have kids. So, but yeah, I love them all. They're all great in their own way. They're all unique. They're not carbon copies of each other. And yeah, this was of all the topics that we just kind of hit, of all the categories,
Yeah,
the one
tough.
that I had the hardest time was the series, because I really do. Unlike some of these other things, I don't feel like I'm necessarily putting anything down by picking one over the other. But with the series, I do. I truly do love all of them for their own reasons, and yeah.
Yeah, because one thing I like about TOS though is because when I see like it on TV or something like that, it's just nice to put it on even if it's in the middle of a season. It's just like it feels so homey, I guess.
It does.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really does. And I guess my last thought on TOS would be that I just whenever I go back to it, I don't know. I feel like those episodes are heavy. Like there's a lot going on in them. There's a lot packed into them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of issues. They're really, I don't know. I very rarely come across one that I feel like is kind of like a paint by numbers, like, doesn't really have anything to say, just like your standard episode. They all kind of have something, like a big question it's asking, a big topic it's raising. So I appreciate that. Each episode, to me, even the bad ones, I think carries heft. And I think maybe that's because there's only 79 of them, and maybe because there's less of them and they're all maybe a little longer. They have a 50-minute running time compared to the others that are closer to 45. Maybe those extra 5 minutes, is what I'm thinking of when I'm thinking of this extra like heft to each episode. But those are the kinds of things that kind of played into my thinking with picking TOS.
Yeah, Nick saying he's gonna rewatch Enterprise, and
Please do.
yeah, I just recommend you guys keep an open mind when you rewatch things, because I think it gets unfairly compared to other series. So I think the open mindedness really, did that with Voyager right now, and it's just like eye opening for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah, but I think I don't know, Bill. You kind of put it in a great way, like especially with Enterprise, like do the same thing that happened with Enterprise to another show like TNG, like
Hmm.
cut off those seasons and stuff like that, and it might not be as
Yeah,
bad as people say.
I'll go to my grave saying that.
Yeah.
If you take TNG and cut off seasons 5, 6, and 7, and what does TNG look like? It kind of looks like Enterprise. So, um, you know, yeah. Well, thanks, Nick. That will. I'll get a good night's sleep tonight. Thankfully.
Yeah, just trying to see what other people's. So Nick's first is TNG, Voyager, TOS, Deep Space Nine. Wow, Deep Space Nine um, is deep in Nick's list, but
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
It's Deep Space Nine is certainly divisive. It tackles some. I don't want to get in. I can't say that. It does look like you did kind of explain maybe a little bit here. Long time to try to catch its stride. Yeah. I mean, I certainly know people who are not as big into Deep Space Nine for a variety of reasons. They don't like the darkness of it. They don't like that it's not on a ship and that it's standing in place. Like I don't know what anyone individually would have their reason as, but you're certainly not alone, Nick, with having Deep Space Nine lower on your list.
Yeah,
No, I couldn't agree with that
yeah,
more.
yeah,
Yeah, that's really truly how I feel.
yeah. It's a four-way tie for sure.
Yeah, it really is it's a tie. Is really the truth of it.
Yeah, and what I liked about Deep Space Nine it was because it was so different. They tackled, a something we'd never seen before on a space station, and throughout the show, like you see, like they get their own ship and they can go different places and stuff. So that's definitely nice for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, Nick. That's how we always put it. It's just picking your favorite kid. It's impossible. They're all great in their own way for sure.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, so we're kind of approaching on the over the hour and a half mark. If you guys have any final points, for sure, get those out. But after that,
hit us up on social media. Talk to us on Twitter. Talk to us on our Quietly There Facebook page.
Yeah, all of the social media stuff is down in the description, for sure. But I hope you guys had a great time for sure. We definitely had a bunch of fun, deciding these and picking these, and definitely we loved hearing from all you guys in chat for sure. It was definitely nice to see.
Thank you very much for coming and participating. Like talking and sharing your thoughts, and you guys make it worth doing.
Yep.
Like we kind of said at the beginning, Dan and I could Skype each other and talk to each other one-on-one easily, but we're doing this the way we're doing it to, include other people and hear what you guys have to say, and hopefully maybe get a little wiser by hearing your opinions. And
yeah, definitely spread the word. We'd love to get
do.
more people in here for sure.
Yep. If you have any friends who you think would enjoy, if you have Star Trek buddies on social media in real life, whoever might be interested in Star Trek discussion, please point them in our direction, and we'll have to win them over.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's gonna do it for us, guys. Like I said, it was a good time. Definitely. Check us out on Twitter. All our info is down in the description. We'll see you guys in the next episode.
Yep. Thank you for coming, everybody.
We'll see you guys next week to discuss captains. So definitely throughout the week, start getting those juices flowing about the captains and stuff. But till then, see you guys later.
See ya.